Mandatory military service. A path to national unity or an infringement on freedom? Mandatory military service, also known as conscription or compulsory enlistment, is a policy that requires citizens to serve in the military for a specific period. Historically, conscription has been a common practice in many nations, especially during times of war or national crisis. However, in today's geopolitical climate, where many countries rely on volunteer armies, the relevance and necessity of mandatory military service are hotly debated. Proponents argue that conscription fosters national unity, discipline, and civic responsibility, while critics contend that it infringes on individual freedom and may no longer be essential in an era of professionalized military forces. Countries like Israel, South Korea, and Switzerland maintain mandatory military service, citing its importance for national defense and social cohesion. Meanwhile, nations like the United States and the United Kingdom rely on volunteer armies, believing that modern military needs can be met without forcing citizens into service. This raises important questions. Is mandatory military service an outdated concept, or does it still have a place in today's world? What are the potential benefits and drawbacks, and how do they affect individuals and society as a whole? Supporters of mandatory military service argue that it offers several key benefits for both individuals and society. One of the most frequently cited arguments is that conscription fosters a sense of national unity and shared purpose. In countries like Israel, where military service is compulsory for most citizens, the experience of serving in the armed forces creates a common bond among people from diverse backgrounds. It provides a shared experience that cuts across social, economic, and ethnic divides, helping to build a cohesive national identity. For example, in Israel, where military service is a cornerstone of society, conscription has been credited with fostering a sense of solidarity among its citizens. In a country that faces constant security threats, the military is seen as a unifying force. Service in the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, is considered a rite of passage for young Israelis, and the shared experience of military training and national defense plays a significant role in shaping the country's culture. Many Israelis view their time in the IDF not only as a duty but also as a privilege, a chance to contribute to the protection and stability of their nation. Mandatory military service is also seen as a way to instill discipline, responsibility, and leadership skills in young people. By spending time in the military, individuals learn valuable life lessons, punctuality, teamwork, perseverance, and respect for authority, that can serve them well in both their personal and professional lives. Some proponents believe that mandatory service helps combat the increasing individualism and entitlement seen in modern society by teaching young people to prioritize the collective good over personal interests. This concept of civic duty is an important aspect of the argument in favor of conscription. In a democracy, where citizens benefit from the rights and protections provided by the state, some argue that it is only fair for individuals to give back to their country through military service. Former French President Charles de Gaulle once said, "A country worthy of its youth demands from it the highest dedication." This sentiment reflects the belief that national service is a way to repay the privileges of citizenship by contributing to the defense and well-being of the nation. While there are clear benefits to conscription, critics argue that mandatory military service also has significant drawbacks, chief among them the infringement on individual freedom. In a free society, the argument goes, individuals should have the right to choose their own path in life. Forcing someone to serve in the military, especially if they are morally opposed to war or military service, is seen by many as a violation of personal liberty. In countries where freedom of choice is a core value, conscription is often viewed as coercive and out of step with modern democratic principles. In the United States, where the draft was abolished in 1973 in favor of an all-volunteer military, the emphasis on individual freedom has been a central argument against reinstating mandatory service. During the Vietnam War, when the draft was still in effect, widespread opposition arose as many Americans felt that conscription disproportionately affected the poor and marginalized, who had fewer opportunities to avoid service. The draft lottery system, implemented in 1969, was meant to address some of these inequalities, but it did not fully eliminate the public perception that conscription was unfair. Furthermore, critics argue that in modern warfare, where technological advancements have dramatically changed the nature of combat, a highly trained, professional military is more effective than one composed of conscripts. The rise of specialized military roles, such as cyber warfare, intelligence, and drone operations, requires individuals with specific skill sets and advanced training. Volunteer armies, which allow for longer-term careers and deeper expertise, are often better suited to meet the demands of contemporary military operations than a constantly rotating pool of conscripts. Opponents of conscription also point to the economic and social costs of mandatory service. Removing young people from the workforce for several years can have significant economic consequences, particularly in countries with small or aging populations. Additionally, conscription can delay education and career development, creating challenges for individuals once they return to civilian life. For example, South Korea, which maintains a mandatory military service policy, has seen concerns about the impact on young men's career prospects, as they often have to pause their university studies or early careers for nearly 2 years of military service. In today's geopolitical climate, the relevance of conscription varies widely depending on the country's security needs and cultural values. In nations like Israel and South Korea, where external threats are constant and immediate, conscription remains a critical component of national defense. South Korea, which faces ongoing tensions with North Korea, requires nearly all able-bodied men to serve for about 18 to 21 months. The threat from North Korea's military and nuclear capabilities justifies the need for a large standing army, making conscription an essential part of South Korea's defense strategy. On the other hand, countries like the United States and many European nations have transitioned to all-volunteer militaries. In these nations, the absence of an existential threat and the growing professionalization of the military have reduced the need for conscription. For example, the U.S. military has been able to meet its recruitment needs without resorting to a draft, largely due to the financial incentives and career opportunities offered to service members. Additionally, modern militaries increasingly rely on technology and special forces, reducing the necessity of large numbers of conscripted soldiers. The debate over the relevance of conscription in today's world reflects broader questions about the role of the military in society, the balance between individual freedom and collective responsibility, and the evolving nature of national security threats. Mandatory military service remains a complex and contentious issue, with strong arguments on both sides. On one hand, it can foster national unity, discipline, and a sense of shared responsibility. On the other hand, it raises concerns about individual freedom, fairness, and the effectiveness of conscripted forces in modern warfare. In countries facing immediate security threats, conscription may continue to be seen as a vital tool for defense. However, in nations with stable volunteer armies, mandatory military service may seem increasingly unnecessary. Ultimately, whether conscription is an outdated relic of the past or a necessary safeguard for the future depends largely on a country's specific security needs and cultural values. What is clear, however, is that the debate over mandatory military service touches on some of the most fundamental questions about citizenship, freedom, and the role of the individual in society. As global security challenges continue to evolve, so too will the conversation about the place of conscription in the modern world.